I think being objective about your skill sets is difficult in any part of life. In poker particularly, it's super important that you're able to be that way, and it took me years to kind of detach my personal worth from individual plays that I was making.
You have to treat it as a business. Try to stay sharp with your game, try to be working on your game all the time. Even when you're winning, it's just as important to be working on your game because that's how you come up with new ideas in poker.
Every good poker player knows that trends change, and they change quickly. So what you're doing today might not be correct tomorrow.
A lot of people, when they're losing, will just chalk it up to negative variance. But when you're winning, very few people will chalk it up to positive variance. Generally, there's more involved there than there is on the negative side of things. When things are going poorly, we play worse. You can convince yourself that you're just getting unlucky, or you can convince yourself that everyone's the worst. The reality is you're not putting the work in and you don't understand the game well enough. What sets our camp apart is that we have a very small, intimate group that kind of grew up together learning the game. So we've all reached some high level of success, never having anybody there to blaze a trail for us. The coaches I chose to be a part of this were Brent Hanks, Dan O'Brien, Jordan Young, and Christian Soto. Brent is the guy that I've known the longest in the game. He's achieved tremendous success. He's the one who made me understand how much studying was necessary and how important it was for us to be putting in all this work off the field. Dan was one of the first guys I met upon moving out to Vegas, and him and I are like oil and water. We couldn't be any more different, and I think that's incredibly important, particularly in this game where it's so subjective. Jordan, he's kind of like that next wave of guys, the guys who grew up strictly online. He gets a lot of the mentality of the people that we're targeting for these camps, the younger generation who are trying to make it as professionals. And finally, Christian, he's relatively new to my inner circle. He reached out to me about 1.5 years ago for coaching.
I emailed him and he's like, yeah, sure, like, I'll think about it. Can you email me your entire strategy? So I go through like my entire strategy. I write down like 3-4 pages worth of stuff. Like I'm really going in. Like I depolarize my range, all these like really huge terms, like trying to impress him. And he writes back like, that's a good start. I'll be in touch. And that was it.
He's so persistent and so like excited and thirsty to learn that it was like just really hard to say no to.
I kept asking questions, and then he was just like, hey, why don't you just come out for this camp and you could ask me whatever the hell you want. And then I ended up showing up.
You know, I really began to recognize how good at the game he is. He's a coach himself. He's a part owner of Red Chip Poker, which is a coaching site. You know, his growth in 1.5 years just speaks volumes because he's kind of a success story of the whole process. There are 3 components to the camp: basic game theory, application, and then finally tales of the trials and tribulations of being a pro. The concept of solve for why is understanding where theory and philosophy meet math and analytics. And poker is a really unique game in that in order to succeed, you really need to be proficient in both areas.
The way that I've approached the game has changed drastically in the past 6 to 12 months, honestly. People are just way better now, which is annoying.
With the game getting tougher now, I think it's important to have a strategy before you go and sit at the table. It's not a specific way that you're going to be playing a certain hand, but it's just an overall strategy that you're trying to employ.
It's about forcing your opponents to make mistakes. And there's a difference between capitalizing on their mistakes and forcing them to make mistakes. So what we teach, and like what they've taught me, is force them to make mistakes and you'll be making a lot of money.
You know, we're not here just trying to get you to mechanically play better. Worrying about whether you should be raising 2.5 times the big blind or 4 times the big blind, in the long run is pretty insignificant. But understanding why 2.5 is better in this spot and 4 is better in that one is much more relevant. As far as the play and the application goes, we're just going to let the game flow and go uninterrupted. So we're going to play 5-10 no limit with a $2,500 minimum buy-in and a $2,500 maximum buy-in. We're going to treat it like a real cash game, but the students won't be putting up any money. Over the course of the 3 days that the camp will run, at the end of each day of play, whoever the biggest winner is will receive $500 back from their admission fee. And then finally, whoever cumulatively earns the most chips over the 3-day span will receive 5% of what they won over the 3-day span, up to $1,000. So, there's a chance that if you do really well, you can almost free roll the camp. And being that we restrict this camp to 9 members or so, everybody's gonna get plenty of one-on-one time with the coaches. We'll record all the hands, have as close to a television broadcast as we can possibly do in a home setting. We have RFID technology in our tables, so there will be a product afterwards where you'll get to see how you interact in an actual game and what your tendencies are in certain positions with certain hands, as well as the coach's commentary over this video. And that's a tool that you'll be able to use moving forward in multiple facets. The more you come into adulthood, the more you can try to make a regular life out of being a professional poker player and not glamorize the Hollywood aspect of it, where you're out till 5 a.m. tying one on and then waking up at 8 to go play some tourists and take them for what they're worth. If I had had somebody there who was able to explain the business side of things, the interpersonal relationships, the gambling, how to give action to get action, just what it takes to actually operate as a functioning business.
The days off are just as important as the days of playing because of the stress of going to work and losing money. Like, people don't understand that. I go to work and I come home with less money all the time.
No matter how many times you kind of go through periods of winning and losing, you still can have a bit of a short memory. And when you're winning, everything's beautiful, you're the best. And when things start to go against you, sometimes it becomes very stressful when you're kind of still spending like you're bringing in a lot of money.
It's hard to rationalize that to someone that's been winning for 6 months straight, that they're gonna not be winning for a couple of months. It's just going to happen.
Fortunately for me, I haven't lost. I haven't gone on a huge downswing or anything like that. But that's actually how I learned a lot. Last year in camp, I came and I just was like, man, this game is tough. A good way to get better is to just associate yourself with better players. Why is Berkey a successful poker player? I really want to say because he doesn't give a fuck, but I don't want to say that.
Oh, I really don't want to toot Berkey's horn by any means.
With his last dollar, he'll put it on the line because he's so confident that he's better than the next guy.
The thing I'm most impressed with about Berkey's game is his ability to figure out what bothers him at the table and then just emulate that and be that person. And no one wants to be just harassed at the table all the time, just being raised, re-raised, facing large bets for their entire stacks.
That's something that most people don't have the courage to do. And that's why he's so good. He just has the confidence to take on anybody, and he's shown it just playing the biggest game in the world, right? He plays 300, 600.
Berkey's just comes at it from a different angle. He plays the game differently than anyone I've ever met.
The ability to kind of think through things and be playing for more money than you're comfortable with, but not really give a shit. And Berkey's done that better than anyone.
I talked earlier about being 6 months ahead of the curve. I think he's 5 years ahead of it. It's eye-opening to be able to talk to somebody like that just thinks about the game completely different than anyone else.
I've been flush, I've been broke, but I've never been afraid to press what I perceived as a skill edge. This is the professional poker life. And this is what it entails. And if you're fortunate enough to be surrounded by other very talented, successful players, this is what you have to look forward to.